Last week, we started part 1 of our Antichrist List of Qualifications, against which we will test potential suspects in the coming weeks. We learned, because of his release from the abyss, that the Antichrist is an ancient god associated with the pantheons of one, if not several, of the ancient kingdoms that ruled the earth. We learned that he is not human, however, he will reappear in a man's body through possession or incarnation. This week, we'll discuss the world's astonishment at his reappearance, his body, his kingdom, his power and technology, his association with Judas, and the possibility of his sonship to and connection with Satan himself. Join us in part 2 as we discover and explore the biblical clues about the one who's prophesied to come from the beginning all the way to the end of the Bible. That is the one, the only, the infamous, the Antichrist.
Thank you for watching I Believe X.
All right, let's get started. Before we get started, let's review what we learned last week. Okay, we learned that the Antichrist will be released, resurrected, or reborn from the abyss. The Bible doesn't say when or how, but it says he comes out of the abyss. We learned that he is a non-human, fallen angel, possibly, foreign god, or principality, because the abode of the abyss and Tartarus, scripturally speaking, as well as Greek mythologies, is reserved for non-humans, whereas Hades is reserved for humans. So he is a non-human entity. We learned that he is a ruling god king, that he's not a principality, ruling over the seventh head and out of the seventh head and over the 10 current kingdoms of the earth, which are the 10 horns. We learned that he once was on earth, visibly, possibly. Okay, he is not a god that is ruled from or through or out of the Roman Empire or is directly associated with the Roman pantheon, but he could have Roman pantheon equivalency. We learned that he is a returning god of Egypt, possibly Sumer, which is Assyria and Babylon, Persia or Greece. And last but not least, we learned that Babylon the Great could potentially be a clue that the Antichrist has an ancient association specifically with the gods of Babylon. Okay, let's go on. Now, the first qualification on part 2, which is this week, is that the world will be in astonishment. So what does this mean? Let's read. It says, the inhabitants of the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world will be astonished when they see the beast, because he once was, now is not, and yet will come. There will be an astonishment because he once was. There's a possibility, this is a clue, that the beast or the Antichrist himself is famous or well known. So it's possible that he is a god of an ancient pantheon that is well known in the mythologies. This is not something that they're confused about or bewildered about when they see him, but will be astonished when they see him because he once was. So he's a returning god that through ancient archaeology, cuneiform texts, seals, or the mythologies is well known and is already known about, that people would not be confused about, but would be more astonished about when he reappears. The New Living Translation says they were amazed at his reappearance. There's another translation says, and he will be present again, and that he reappeared. So there's an astonishment that he's reappeared because they know who he once was. So we're going to add that to the qualification list. So the first qualification of part 2, which is this week, is that they will wonder and be astonished because of his reappearance and or resurrection or return to the earth. Okay, let's go on. Now, he has a beast man body. Now, he's referred to as the man of lawlessness. Okay, and even though he's an ancient god, you got to ask yourself, how is it possible that he's a man if he's an ancient god? And we're going to explain that here in a few. Okay, now, 2 Thessalonians 2:4 says, the man of lawlessness is revealed at his coming, and he sets himself up in God's temple. In the Greek, this word temple is naos. Not so many people know that. I believe that the temple that's referred to here, that the man of lawlessness sets himself up in, is a body, a human body. This is why we have an ancient god appearing as a man. This is why the number of the beast is the number of a man. I think that he had a different body, maybe a hybrid body, more along the lines of the seraphim, cherubim, maybe something different, not a man. and not appearing in the image of God. So why is this important? Well, Genesis 1:27 says, so God created mankind in his own image. Now, if this returning God is going to deceive the world and cause the world to think that he is the God that seated us, okay, and exalt himself over all the things that are called God or all so-called gods, okay, then and he's going to be accepted and received by us as our God, then I submit to you today, then he has to look like us. Because if he doesn't look like us, we're going to be afraid of him. If a dragon showed up, a physical reptilian showed up and said, I'm your God, and everyone says, but you're not, we weren't created in your image, you don't look like us. First off, we're going to be afraid of him. We're afraid of any being, really, for that matter, that doesn't look like us. That's why when God sends angels, for most part, we entertain them and know it not. He sends them in bodies that look like us so that we're not afraid. Okay. Only the prophets Ezekiel and a few others actually saw angels in other forms, Isaiah as well. Anyways, let's move on. So now the nous of God. Okay, he sets himself up in the nous of God. The word nous is 49 times for temple, and temple is 120 occurrences of temple in the New Testament. 71 is Heron, which is the physical Jewish temple of Herod, and 49 is nous, which is the abiding place of God, or the body. Okay, on the bottom left here, you can see here that Heron is the entire temple complex, all of its enclosures, precincts, courtyards, and the central sanctuary. Whereas Naos, on the right-hand side, is the temple where God himself resides. Now, in the New Testament, this is a human body. Let me show you. 1 Corinthians, it says, do you not know that your bodies are the naos, the temples? 2 Corinthians 6:16 says, for we are the naos, the temple of the living God. Bodies, human bodies. 1 Corinthians 3:16 says, do you not know that your bodies are the God's naos? So when the man of lawlessness sets himself up in the temple of God, he does it in a man's body. I don't think we're waiting on a third Jewish temple. I think it's a false prophetic sign. You could disagree, it doesn't matter. The point I want to make is that he comes as a man, even though he's an ancient God, and he sets himself up in the temple of God. I personally believe that temple of God is a man's body, so that he can claim that he is the one who seated us, and that we are created in his image and his likeness, and he will be well received by the people on the earth, and they won't be afraid of him. So anyways, Matthew 26:61 says, and I'm able to destroy the temple of God. Jesus says this, the naos of God. And John 2:19 says, this temple, this body, I will raise again. This naos, Jesus says, I will raise again. Once again, this is the naos. Okay. And of course, Jesus says he was speaking about the naos of his body. So the man of lawlessness may appear and is revealed in the naos of God. He appears in a man. But the Bible also says that he is the son of perdition. So why is this important? Well, son of perdition is only mentioned 2 times, okay? The first time is mentioned about Judas, and the second time about the Antichrist. Only twice in the Bible. But it's interesting that the son of destruction, and it could be coincidence, but this could be a clue or an indication of how he enters a man's body. Okay, we don't know if he's incarnate, which means he's born into a man's body and raised up as a child like Jesus was, or if he possesses a man's body. Now, because Judas is called the son of destruction, and Satan entered Judas and possessed Judas, this could be a clue to why the Antichrist is also called the son of destruction or the son of perdition, because the God, Satan's son, an ancient God as well, just like Satan himself, the God of this world, entered Judas, the Antichrist, his son, the God who's to come, just like Jesus came, may possess a leader's body on the earth. How he does that, whether it's a dual possession or if that leader sacrifices his body and at the same time then he takes full possession of it, of a dead leader after the fact, we don't know. But this is one of the qualifications, that he will reappear, be reborn, resurrected as a man, or possibly possess a man, but will be a God in a man's body. Let's go on to the next qualification. He is the beast that is crowned. Many people believe that the rider on the first horse is actually the Antichrist who's crowned. And number one, because it begins, the whole Great Tribulation begins with this first rider. That's number one. And number two, he's crowned. And number three, since the man of lawlessness is revealed at his coming, it sounds real similar to the rider on the white horse. Revelation 6:1-2 says, I looked, and there before me was a white horse, rider on a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode as a conqueror, bent on conquest. Now, it is true that in Revelation 19:11, that Jesus comes on a white horse, and some say that this same messianic appearance, that this could be an actual, it's similar to a messianic appearance, and that's what it means prophetically. But what we're going to do is we're going to add this to one of our qualification lists, and we're going to check the ancient gods who take on a man's body, either born into a man's body or possesses a man's body. We're going to check some of those ancient gods against this scripture here, and we're going to look for an ancient god potentially, or ask ourselves, does this ancient god have an association with a bow or a white horse? Maybe the white horse is not prophetic for a messianic figure, which most believe, but is actually a true association with an ancient god that somehow has some ancient association with the white horse, or has an ancient association with bow and arrows. We'll see. Okay, so the next association or next qualification is the Antichrist a fallen, or is the person we're checking a fallen god associated with a bow or a white horse? Okay, which could be a qualification of the Antichrist. Okay, next, he has an association with a resurrected nation or a resurrected kingdom that once was on the earth, but we thought was either dead or had been defeated or was gone or had died or no longer existed. Something along those lines. Okay, I can't really say exactly what, but it's a resurrected, reborn, reappearance. This whole idea of both the Antichrist himself, but also his seventh head. Revelation 13:3 says, one of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. Okay, now this fatal wound means that potentially he was defeated or had been defeated or died either by God himself or a nation on the earth that was defeated, that became a breakaway civilization and still exists. Okay, or its power came back to power somehow in a breakaway fashion. Okay, Revelation 13:12 says that they will worship the beast who had his fatal wound and been healed. So this is what it looks like. The god beast will be over the seventh head, which is a resurrected, reappearing / either defeated, previously defeated, or breakaway, or just left the earth on spaceships, ancient technology, and is returning. So we're going to look along those lines. Okay, so the Antichrist, next qualification, is the leader. Is he the leader of a reappearing resurrected seventh head, which is the fourth beast that controls the 10 world leaders? Did he return almost like the Anunnaki are returning? Is he a breakaway civilization, almost like the Nazis after World War II? But he has some association with a previously defeated or left, or we thought was dead, seventh head or kingdom or power or army that's returned. So the Antichrist is resurrected, reborn, returned, reappearing, and so is his army. That is, so is the group of people or the kingdom that he rules, that will rule along with the 10 kings who will relinquish their sovereignty to this beast army that appears on the earth. Okay, let's go on. The beast dragon. Okay, is he associated with dragon tech? We're going to look at ancient gods that were associated with dragons. Okay, it says, Revelation 13:3, it says, the dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority, and people worship the dragon because he had given authority to the beast. Okay, so now this means that there's a transfer of power and or an equipping. Does the ancient god, has he been equipped with dragon power or dragon technology, or is he associated with dragon or Draco authority? Okay, we're checking all possibilities and all clues when we check the ancient gods of the past. Okay, so dragon tech, dragon power. That brings us to our second to last qualification. Does the Antichrist, is his army, the army that he has and he comes with, the seventh head, okay, do they have Draco power, authority, and alien tech, or Draco alien tech, or is it all supernatural? But is there technology associated with the dragon, which is the Draco, or the god of the Dracos? Potentially. We'll see. Okay, let's move on. Now, the dragon beast is the Antichrist, the incarnate son of the dragon. Now, why do I say that? Now, in the beginning, I said he's the one who was prophesied from the beginning, and this is why I say that. Genesis 3:15 says, and I will put enmity between you, the ancient serpent, who's the devil, who's Satan himself, who's the dragon, and the woman, Eve. But here's where it gets good. And between your seed, That's the dragon seed. That's the serpent seed. That's Satan's seed, as if though he has a son that's prophesied to come. And her seed, Jesus Christ himself, who will crush your head. Okay. So just as Yahweh had a son and prophesied his son was to come and would take on the sins of the world, okay, as a ransom, it's also prophesied that the dragon would have a son as well. Is this the Antichrist? I believe so. And if this is the Antichrist, and if this is a clue that it was prophesied that the son of the dragon, the ancient serpent, whoever ancient mythology or whatever the pantheons, whatever it looks like Satan himself is, who he is, does he have a son? And does that son, we're going to look at the sons of the potential prospects or suspects of who that is. And we're going to see, is he a son of an ancient god that could potentially be Satan himself? It's going to get interesting. Okay. So watch this. Revelation 12:9 says, the great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent could be a clue or an indication, gives us the impression that this is the serpent in the Garden of Eden, okay, called the devil or Satan himself. So if we look at not only biblically, but also other ancient mythologies, and we look at the gods and we compare the gods and the list of different creation stories, such as Numa Elish and different creation stories that we have in amongst all the religions, as well as all the kingdoms and all the ancient gods and mythologies. We look at that, okay? We're going to be looking for Satan himself, a figure that could potentially be Satan. And then we're going to see, does he have a son? Now, one of the clues, biblically speaking, is that Revelation 2:13 says, to identifying who Satan himself is, and then we're going to see if the Antichrist has an association with that figure. The Bible says in ancient Pergamon, in Revelation 2:13, that Satan had a throne in Pergamon, and Satan lived in Pergamon, okay? Which means that the ancient dragon, the great dragon, the being, the God, who has angels, okay? A lot of people say Satan is an angel. No, he's a God who has angels. Read Revelation 12. Satan and his angels, he's the God of this world. He's in the God level, not the angel level, not the principality, the God level. At any rate, Satan himself, what was in ancient Pergamon that would give us a clue that Satan had a throne there and Satan lived there, and who Satan is, okay? And does the Antichrist who we're comparing, does he have an association with that ancient God who was in Pergamon? I don't know. You're going to tell me. We're going to see. You ready? Okay, our last but not least qualification for part 2 of identifying the Antichrist and our beast qualifications is, okay, is the Antichrist, is he the son of a biblically revealed Satan being associated with his throne in ancient Pergamon, and an ancient God's son, specifically an ancient God who is identified biblically as a God who has Pergamon association, which is in Turkey itself, and we are going to see. Listen, this concludes our last qualification list. Next, in the next following messages, we're going to look at some of these gods, and we're going to, one by one, we're going to create a checklist. We're going to use part 1 and part 2 as our qualification. We're going to do a litmus test of all the gods against this list to see who qualifies and who could be the Antichrist himself, who is the ancient God, who will either take on and be born into or possess a man's body.
Thank you for watching I Believe X. Help us get the word out by liking and sharing this video.